What's up guys, Asian here again with another Trials Guide video, and today we're going to be going over the second boss of the Vet Halls of Fabrication. Specifically, this is going to be about the Pinnacle Factotum. So this is one of the more difficult bosses in Halls. This is usually the boss that a lot of progression groups are going to kind of struggle against. This is kind of one of the multiple hills that you have to kind of traverse when you want to progress through Halls of Fabrication. So in this video we'll be going over mechanics as well as the strategies that Mayflower and Hellfire use when we're doing this particular boss, and I'll kind of talk about some various other potential strategies that you might want to consider using in order to combat some of the fight mechanics here. So this is from a run, this must have been like 2 months ago now, but the strategies still remain exactly the same here.
It's already starting. We're going. This is my favorite part.
Alright, so just starting off here, so before you make the first pull, there are going to be adds that spawn. And you just have to kill the adds. It's going to be just 2 spheres and 2 Kagutis, and the boss spawns immediately afterwards, and he spawns right in the center here, and there will be AoEs that fall down, so you don't want to step in those, obviously. Now, for this particular strategy, we have the main tank tanking the Pinnacle Factotum, and then I'm going to be the off tank, and I'm actually going to be tanking the adds that spawn. So you can see here we have a Centurion that spawns. So there's going to be 2 types of Centurions, and this is the first type of Centurion. This is normally just called a Centurion and sometimes called the melee Centurion, depending on the raid lead and kind of what you want to talk about. This is the first mechanic here that the normal Centurion, melee Centurion uses, and it's called Steam Breath. So if you look up here on the upper left hand side of the screen, this kind of indicator is from the Halls of Fabrication status panel, which is written up by code, I believe. So this is very nice to have. I highly recommend you use this, regardless if you're the raid lead, tank, healer, or DPS. You can see here it says Scalded Healing debuff. So that's basically the debuff that's applied to you if you get caught in this conal steam breath. So it'll deal damage, and then it'll put a healing debuff on you. So let's see if I get hit with this one. So steam breath, you can see here we step out of it. Everybody steps out of it. You can actually kind of dance around the steam breath here. So you can see he basically kind of does it in kind of 4 quadrants. So he kind of covers 90 degrees in one side and then 180 degrees on the opposite side. Then he spins around and does the next 2, and he does that twice. So each of those 4 quadrants gets hit twice. So during this phase you obviously want to back out of it if you can, especially as a DPS, but definitely as a tank. So you can see here I actually didn't get hit by any of it here. I managed to get out. But if you do happen to get hit, for each hit that you take from Steam Breath, you get a 10% healing debuff. So that basically decreases the amount of healing you take by 10%. So if I managed to get, let's say, 4 hits in, I would have a 40% scalding healing debuff, so I would take 60% of the healing normally taken. So if a Breath of Life, for instance, would normally hit me for, let's say, 10k, it would actually hit me for 6k instead. And this can stack all the way up to 100%. This debuff lasts for 15 seconds, and after that 15 seconds are up, all your debuffs, all the stacks are basically removed. So if you're 10 or 90, all of it will get removed after 15 seconds. Now it can be reapplied if you manage to get hit by Steam Breath by a second Centurion during that 15-second window, so that's just something to keep in mind there. Normally these Centurions come out one at a time, and you want to target them down, single target them while they're up, so that way the main tank and off tank don't have to deal with the healing debuff, particularly the main tank. But if you take too long to kill this one Centurion, then a second Centurion will also spawn as well. So you just want to make sure you're killing the Centurion fast and easy. So what a lot of progression groups do is once it spawns, everybody focuses the Centurion that's up down. Sometimes you will stack the Centurion on top of the Pinnacle Factotum, so that way it's cleaved down. And a lot of score running groups actually have the main tank take this Centurion. You don't have the off tank taking the Centurion at all. The off tank's actually in a DPS spec for the entirety of this fight, actually, with a taunt for the second type of Centurion that will spawn at 40% health. So right now the Pinnacle Factotum is doing his next mechanic, which is the upstairs mechanic. So he'll basically raise his staff up, and you'll see that each of the 4 pads along the corners of the room will light up, and you have to activate a synergy with it, and it'll teleport you up to the top of the arena. So that's a completely separate platform up top. And the way the pads are normally ordered are north, south, east, and west. So the pad that what you came in from, so basically after you kill the 100 killers, the pad closest to the chest is considered south, and then north, west, and east respectively. Guilds do different strategies. So there's two main strategies that I recommend progression style guilds use. The first one is going to be a lot safer, but potentially a lot more difficult to coordinate. The second one is a little bit easier to coordinate, but it does rely on basically having the top group know what they're doing. So it's a little bit more risky that way. So if somebody dies up top, then the second method is actually a little bit more risky. You still need to send somebody up to replace that person who died, but for the second method, if they die and their sphere is not dead, then it does become a big issue. So Mayflower and Hellfire, we both use the second method, but I'll describe the first method first. And actually will show you guys a video of this first method, because this is the method that actually a lot of speedrunner guilds and top end guilds actually run. So I just have to look this up real quick. LZH Pinnacle. So let's head over to, let's drag this over here actually. So this is LZH's fight of the Pinnacle Factotum, and he actually goes up top. So let's just scrub over to when he ports up. So you port up here. You can see you have two other people porting up. So each of the pads can obviously take one person at a time. You can't have four people all jumping up at the same time when you're kind of teleporting up these pads here. So you have three people going up, and then maybe the fourth one's going to go up after this. And so what happens is up here, this is kind of what it looks like. You have four spheres in front of each pad. So there's one here, one there, one over here, and then there's one on the opposite side of this. It's hard to tell here from his UI, but they have a shield around it. It's about a 3 million damage shield. But we'll see if we can see if he gets the tether first. Alright, so you can see here there's a tether that attaches to him from this center object here, the center mechanism basically. Just like the 100 killers, this beam will actually remove the shield from the sphere, and it will allow you to start damaging it. In addition, while your beam is connected and basically going through that sphere, you deal significantly more damage to the sphere. So you can see where LZH is positioned here. He's positioned directly behind the sphere, and that's basically what you want to do here. So for this particular strategy, you can see that the two people on either side of him, I believe it's Sock Monkey and Kianpu, they basically go over and help him kill the sphere here. And so they're just going to move on to each sphere like this as a group. So if we just continue on this video here, you can see that they basically all come up here and just kill the sphere here. Now the tether you can see here doesn't last for a very long period of time, and only one person at a time is able to get that tether. While you have that tether taking damage, you can see here there's electricity balls here flying around that also deals damage. So ideally speaking, you have the Magicka DPS go up because they have shields, but you can send a stamina DPS up to, you just have to remember they need to have vigor. I believe Kianpu in this instance is on a stam blade, so he has vigor for this top section here in case he gets the tether. As you can see here, basically what they do is they move around as a group, and they have whoever manages to get the tether is the one that's standing behind the sphere, breaking the shield, and they all DPS the spear down. And you can see here they're moving together as a group, the three of them, and whoever gets the tether is kind of random. So you can see here Kianpu got it this time, Sock Monkey had it that time, and then LZH had it that first time. And this is the last sphere that they take out. And then you can see here, Mechanically Challenged does a little bit of a different strategy here. So what they do is they actually send 3 DPS up, and then when they say spheres are dead, they actually send one of the healers up to hit that last button. So you can see here that all of them are by the power switch. You can see here the synergy button has an F button to use the power switch. So there's 4 power switches, each one in front of a spear. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is on the opposite side over there. And basically what you gotta do is you gotta hit the switches at the same time in order to prevent a wipe mechanic on the bottom. If you take too long killing the spheres, if you don't hit the buttons there's a little bit of leeway. You don't have to hit them like exactly at the same time. But if you don't hit the buttons correctly, then it won't activate, and you'll know it'll activate, and I'll show the video afterwards of what happens when you see it activate here. So usually one person responsible for counting down. They go 3, 2, 1, press, and you press the button, and you win. You don't wipe for this particular mechanic here. So you can see here they pushed the button, and you will know you succeeded. The Vaith Sphere will basically shout at you to, make some sort of remark, and you'll hear this loud clunking sound, and basically the screen will kind of shake a little bit. I believe he has screen shake off, so that's why his screen didn't shake that much. And then the pad behind you will actually have this sort of like magical portal thing on top of it. So what you want to do is then you want to jump down this portal here, and then the Vaith Sphere's magic will protect you, and you will not die from the fall damage here. Just like going up, only one person can take the pad down. So each person will have to take the pad opposite of them. So for this particular method here, you go circle all around, and each person has their assigned sphere. So like LZH has the original sphere, and I think Hyunpoo was left, Sock Monkey was right, and then the healer was the one opposite of him. And so that's basically what you do for this particular strategy. Now the strategy that Mayflower and Hellfire uses is a little bit different. So we actually only send up 2 people. So you can pick any 2 pads really. We typically go south and west. And then what happens is each person stands behind a sphere, just like LZH did in the beginning of the top mechanic here. Let me scrabble to it real quick so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I think it's right here. So right here. So basically, so in this instance, you have one person go up on this side, one person go up on the west pad. Both of them will stand behind the sphere. Now when one of them gets the tether, because remember only one person gets the tether at the time, they will break the shield on the sphere right in front of them, and then if you're on the south side, you run to your right and break the east sphere shield all in one go, and then you kill the east sphere. And then when the west person gets their tether, they break this sphere shield, and then they run to the left and get the north sphere shield and kill that sphere. And then once the pads reset, 2 other people will go up from the south and west and kill the west and south sphere respectively, and then they hit the buttons together. That's, like I said, it's a little bit more of a risky strategy because you have to basically trust that your DPS have the high enough DPS to kill the spheres. It really helps to make sure you obviously stand behind the sphere and get the tether down so you do the additional damage. So it's actually a lot easier. You can see here the spheres only have about 1 million health or so, but with the tether on you on the sphere, it actually goes down pretty quickly, even if it's just 1 DPS. But in this instance, we're sending 2 at a time. Each of them are breaking 2 sphere shields, and then 2 other people go up, and then you kind of help out your neighbor if you see that they're having trouble with their sphere. Then you go back to the button and hit the button. That's generally how Mayflower and Hellfire does it. Unfortunately, I do not have a perspective of that, just because I don't DPS for Hellfire and I don't DPS for Mayflower, so I never had a chance to go up top on Vet very often, and I don't have any recordings of that happening. So that's kind of how you do it. So you can go with either method. Like I said, the method that MC uses right here, where you send 3 or 4 DPS up and you guys all go around in a circle, that's a safe method because you're guaranteed to kill all the spheres. But the sending 2 people up, having them break 2 shields each, and then sending 2 people after them, that's a little bit more risky. It gives you a little bit more DPS on the Pinnacle Factotum for a little bit longer, so the fight is a little bit safer that way. But you are playing some risks there. So that's just something that you want to keep in mind. Personally, like I said, Mayflower and Hellfire, we use the second strategy, and we're pretty fine. We've wiped a couple of times when people are learning how to do it, but when people know how to do it, we've never had like a group wipe because of this mechanic, unless people die up top. So when you do die up top, make sure to say that you have died up top, so that way the raid lead can call out another DPS to go up, and make sure to say which pad you are. It's kind of hard to get the orientation down, but typically speaking, you'll be assigned a side, so north, south, east, west, and you just say, south side down, and then another DPS will go up, and they'll press the button or finish off the sphere or whatever have you. So that's the top mechanic here. This will happen quite a few times during the fight. MC has enough DPS that they only do it once, but obviously progression style guilds generally go up anywhere from like 4 to 6 to 7 times. I think Hellfire, the first time we cleared it, we actually had to go up, I think, like 7 or 8 times actually. But on a good run, we only go up maybe 3 or 4 times. Mayflower around the same, 2 to 3 times is typically what we do. So it all depends on your DPS. So you will need to go up here. So the time limit here is, I'm not 100% certain what the time limit here is, but you will have a time limit, and the raid lead will know, downstairs will know when the time limit is about done. When the Pinnacle Factotum teleports to the center, raises his staff, and starts channeling a lot of energy upstairs, that's when you know you basically it's basically do or die time. You have to hit the button now or you are going to wipe. So that's top mechanic. Very long, very lengthy, I know, pretty lengthy explanation, but it's very important that you get this right, because like I said, if you don't do it right, it's a group wipe, and it's unavoidable. So now back to this video here. So top group here is doing their thing. In the meantime, bottom group is doing this. So now for the Pinnacle Factotum's attack. So you can see here he did kind of a Sork teleport move, and he leaves this big electrical AoE on the ground. Get out of that, obviously. Now, something else that you've also noticed, there's a lot of red AoEs coming down. This only happens when the top mechanic is happening. So when the top mechanic is not happening, you will not get these red AoEs on the ground. These deal oblivion damage. So whether you shield, whether you block, it does not mitigate the damage at all. So the only way to actually mitigate the damage is through things like minor protection, major protection, and minor Aegis and major Aegis. So nothing here is going to protect you. Deadly Cloak will help mitigate, but the best thing to do is actually just to get out of the AoEs entirely if you can. Most DPS are able to take 1 or 2 hits. Tank can take anywhere from 2 to 3 hits, but you don't want to get hit at all, because again, it is oblivion damage. There's really very limited sources of mitigation, and this particular damage is environmental. So heroic slash, minor maim on Pinnacle Factotum does not affect the damage taken, so it's only going to be minor protection, major protection, deadly cloak, any sort of percentage damage mitigation that you get, and that's basically it when it comes to mitigating that damage. So the red AoEs that come down during the upper phase, those are all oblivion damage, so we just want to get out of that. So you can see here, so he has a heavy attack when he twirls his staff around. That needs to be blocked by the tank, obviously, and you can see that he shoots out sparkles just like the hunter killers do when they do their tail swipe. Just like the hunter killers, if you get hit by it, you get stunned, you have to break free. You can block it and you won't get the stun. So when you see him twirling his staff around, he's getting ready for his heavy attack. The tank can dodge it, but it'll still shoot out the sparkles, so that's just something to keep in mind as a DPS, especially as a melee DPS. When you see that his spinning animation, back up a little bit so that way you're not hit by 2 or 3 sparkles at once, just so you're not stunned or even die. Alright, so this is another very important mechanic here. So this is what we like to call the tank game, tank mechanic. The actual name of the mechanic is Simulacrum, and you can see here Simulacrum timer here. So this happens at about 45 to 50 seconds interval each, so after 45 seconds it'll happen again. So you can see here, basically he stuns the tank. The tank basically goes down on one knee and is stunned, and he splits into 4 copies that surround the tank as so. The 4 corners of the world sort of thing. Now, when this happens, the boss is invulnerable to damage. So you can see here, so he actually missed one of the blocks here. So this is what happens when you fail the tank game, as we call it. So 1 copy at a time will turn solid and basically do a simulacral blast. So it's basically a giant shock wave that shoots out kind of like in a cone this way in front of him. The main tank, who is stuck here, he can't move at all. He needs to stay within this little circle, green circle here. He needs to block that in order to prevent a wipe. So if you get hit by that wave, you can see here everybody here is dead. So main tank basically needs to block this. And it does it 4 times, so 1, 2, 3, 4. It's random, whichever one comes up. You can see here I'm heavy attacking to kind of give him a little bit of a heads up. If you heavy attack with a lightning staff, the channel will actually move to the next one that turns solid, so it gives your tank a little bit more opportunity to preempt that block. Some tanks just rotate, other tanks like to shield bash, so you hold block and you bash and it'll automatically turn you to the direction you want to bash in, the direction you're looking. I recommend bashing if you're just starting to learn and not kind of like rotate. So there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can either trust your tank that he'll block all 4 hits, or what you can do is you can have everybody stand on one side here. So a common example would be stand on the east side, stand on the south side, stand on the north side, stand on the west side, and basically the tank will basically block that side. So that way the tank knows, okay, I have to block this particular angle, or these 2 particular angles. That way he can ignore 2 of them and just focus on the 2 other ones that he needs to block. That's one thing that Hellfire did in the beginning while we were learning the mechanic. Now that our main tank has learned the mechanic and is very comfortable with it, we're actually able to run around the fight, deal with conduits, and deal with Centurions while this is happening. You can see here that it's killed 5 people instantly, including our 2 healers. So you can see here that I'm rezzing the healer right now. Obviously want the healer up right away. And then everyone else is rezzing as quickly as they can. So the Centurion is spawning. We do the steam breath. So if you happen to have the Centurion up while the tank game is happening, as the off tank, you want to take that Centurion away from the main tank, because the main tank can't move at all during the Centurion game. So you just want to move him away, so that way he's not hit by steam breath at all. So during, you can see here that the Pinnacle Factotum is actually doing a second mechanic here. So this is an interruptable move. Basically targets everybody who's in front of him with this kind of channel. If you manage to get it off, it stuns you and drains your Magicka. So you want to make sure to interrupt. That's primarily going to be the main tank's job. But Magicka DPS, if you have Crushing Shock, it's recommended to obviously use that. Stamina DPS, if you're in front of him already, you can bash him. But it would typically be the main tank's job to do it here. So you can see here that we're getting drained. And I use Crushing Shock to do the interrupt there. So we're still doing the res. This is another move that the Pinnacle Factotum does. It's basically a wide sweeping move. It doesn't hurt at all. It'll blow you back if you don't block it. If you block it, you'll basically stagger a little bit, but it's generally survivable even if you don't block it. So just move out of it to avoid the knockback or the stagger here. So while we're recovering from the missed block here, you can see we're just doing a lot of resing right now because that's kind of what we need to do. Alright, and so this fight basically repeats itself up to the 60% stage here. So you can see Centurion doing steam. Main tank can either get back away, or main tank can kind of try to monkey around it. So you can see here he missed the block again, and we got instant kill. So if you ever, at any time you get instantly killed during this phase, it's because the tank missed a block. So you can just blame the tank for that. So don't feel bad if that happens to you, it's the tank's fault. So we're actually going to move ahead of this fight here up to the 60% mark here, so I can show you the next mechanic that happens here. So around here. So there's two other health thresholds and mechanics that are introduced during the fight, and they happen at health thresholds. So at 60% there's going to be something called a Conduit that spawns, and the Pinnacle Factotum is going to spawn them randomly around the room. Besides the Centurions, these conduits are your first priority. They take precedent over everything else. So at this point here, we're at past 60%, so he's going to start conduit. So your radar notifier tells us the conduit has spawned south, and all the DPS are going to focus down this conduit here. So it is targetable, and you can see here it doesn't have that much health, only about 500,000 health. But what it does do is pretty nasty. So it'll randomly target one person, kind of like what the Pinnacle Factotum did there, except it's going to be single target. And it's basically the exact same thing. It'll slowly drain your Magicka while it is targeting that person, and it'll stun you at the end of the channel, and it'll drain your Magicka by a very hefty amount here. So that's why I want to target that conduit right when it spawns, to avoid that stun and to avoid that Magicka drain. So, like I said, conduits take precedent over everything else, including Centurions. Those are the first thing that you want to kill here. So you can see here that I'm trying to move the Centurion away in case it does steam breath, so that way our main tank is not hit by it. Didn't move him quite far enough here. So the main tank did manage to get a lot of some pretty heavy hits here. So I'm taking. So this is kind of a crap show right now, but this is a clear. This is a one pull. As you can see here, we have a conduit up. We're just going to be resing through this. So this fight is fairly resable up until this point. Once 40% hits and you have the second type of Centurion that spawns, it becomes a lot less recoverable. So during this portion of the fight here, it's pretty recoverable, even if you have two conduits up, as long as you're not at that 40% mark. So we're going to head to the next health threshold, which is 40%. So you can see here that we have the second type of Centurion that spawns. So this is how all groups do it. There's really no other way to do it. So the off tank is going to taunt the second type of Centurion that spawns. Let me back up to what it actually spawns here. Which I think I just missed it. So they start spawning at 40% health. So this is a melee Centurion right here. As you can see, this is one of your normal ones doing his steam. And the one that just spawned next to me, this is the second type of Centurion. People call it different things: shocky arms, spinning Centurion, spinny arms, but basically they all describe the same thing. So you can see here that he's basically going to spin around like a top. And he, basically the off tank, you can see here, I'm trying to get the taunt off him. He'll basically spin like a top and chase whoever has taunt. So it's the responsibility of the main tank, or off tank I should say, to grab taunt of the Centurion and basically run him around the outside of the arena like I am here. For this phase here, the DPS healer and tanks should ideally stick to the inside. So what I tell people here, if you've seen my Hoff videos with Hellfire, is I tell them, if you see this ring here, you want to be inside this ring. And I will try to obviously shout out if I see people outside, but if I mow you down, that's on you. You're not, paying attention to where the spinning Centurion is. And I will always, say where it is so people can avoid it. And I highly recommend you do that as the off tank. So basically dragging this Centurion around the entire time here. And that means the main tank now has to take the normal Centurion that spawns. Now this presents a unique risk to the main tank here. So basically the Simulacrum timer here, you can see here, is at 45 seconds, so he's about to happen the tank game. So he's about to do the tank game right now. So the tank is stunned when he does that he slams the staff down to begin tank game. And while he's stunned, he can't block. So the Centurion, the normal Centurion, has a heavy attack that must be blocked, otherwise it hits you for like 70k or something like that. So that's something that is very RNG dependent. So sometimes it'll happen, sometimes it won't. Raid Notifier will actually tell you if it's going to happen, so that way main tank can say, hey, I'm going to die. So there's really no way around it. There's no easy way around it. So that's something that the main tank's going to have to watch out for. Ideally, it will never happen, but it can happen, and when that does happen, basically what the group has to do is you basically have to kite the main Centurion and the Pinnacle Factotum around. Generally speaking, when that happens with Hailflyer, I will take the main Centurion until the main tank is res, and then we just trade him back. But that is something that can happen that you do want to keep in mind as the main tank. And that's basically the entire game here. So you can see here that when the Centurions die, they don't actually die, they basically despawn, so to speak, so they just collapse. So there's 3 different spawns for the Centurions. There's 3 Centurion scrap heaps, so to say. So just keep an eye as the tanks on where these scrap heaps are, so that way you know where they're going to spawn. So you can see here there's 1 scrap heap in the center here, so there is a chance that there's going to be a spinny arm Centurion that spawns in the center. So when that happens, and you'll see it. So if we go ahead, move ahead to when the next one spawns here. You can see here that there is a wind-up period where you can't target it, and it's going to be obvious because when he spawns, he has electricity around him, and a normal Centurion doesn't have that electricity around him when it spawns. So that's one way you can tell them apart there. I actually lied. There's actually 4. I remembered there's 4, not 3, Centurion spawns throughout the arena. So there will only ever be one of these spinning blade Centurions out at a time, but there can be up to 2 of the normal Centurions out. So you, during this phase here, DPS don't have to worry about this. They just have to worry about making sure they're not, in the path of the off tank. And then the priority is, again, Conduits, and then Centurions, and then the boss. So that's basically what happens at 40% health. Now at this point, it can be pretty difficult to recover if a lot of people go down. If you have 1 or 2 deaths here, it is recoverable. You can see here we have 2 people dead, and this is again a 1 pull. We don't wipe on this pull here. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then that's basically the entire fight. So after 40%, this is basically what happens. Off tank is just kiting it around, main tank's taking the Centurion and the boss. DPS just have to watch out, and then you obviously have the top mechanic that you have to deal with. From here on out, there's really no other mechanics that you have to worry about. It's because you hear that was the spinning Centurion that spawns. He spawned in the center, so I just gave a shout out, hey, it's spawning in the center, and bring him east, so that way DPS know, okay, I need to move out of the center anywhere except east, because he's going to be spinning and going towards the east side. And so you can see here I'm basically saying, hey, watch out, the spinning arm is coming through, just watch out. And you can see here Elzo, your boy, he didn't move out of the way in time, even though I did mention that I was running through here. So that is basically it for the Pinnacle Factotum fight. So a lot of mechanics. Again, this is a very difficult fight. This is one of the major hills that a lot of progression guilds are stuck on. Hellfire was stuck on this for 2 months until we managed to get it down to a point where we can clear it consistently. So that's kind of what you're looking at here. In terms of progression speed. So if you can get past the Pinnacle Factotum, you're in good shape. You're able to get to the 4th boss, the Refabrication Committee. The Arcustodian is deceptively difficult, but if you can get past the Pinnacle Factotum, then you can get past the Arcustodian as long as you know the mechanics of that fight as well. So that's it for this video itself. If you have any questions or comments about any of the mechanics of this fight, any strategies that you might want to share, please feel free to put them down in the comments below. I've only ever run as progression style guilds. I've never actually run with like, you know, score guilds or anything like that. So there might be strategies that they use that are different from what we use here. Again, this is not a perfect run. You saw that we had a lot of wipes, we had a lot of deaths, and we managed to rest through it. So you know, it is a easily resable fight up until the 40% mark. Once you hit the 40% mark, you know, things get a little bit tighter that way. But don't feel bad if you guys are stuck on this boss for a couple of weeks. Like I said, Hellfire was stuck on this boss for 2 months until we managed to get past it. So like I said, if you have any questions or comments or anything at all, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I'll try to get back to them as soon as I can. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys at the next trial boss.